Hello and welcome to Insights in Action with Orange 142, where we interview agency leaders and business owners to uncover the journeys, the strategies, and the insights that drive their success. At Orange 142, we're all about transforming brand stories and impactful digital experiences through innovative media and marketing solutions. And today I'm very lucky to be joined by Sean of Innovaxis Marketing. How's it going, Sean?
Quite well.
Awesome. Sean, I would love to just, start this off by learning a little bit more about you and your background and a little bit more about your agency.
Well, started marketing in 2007, following a career entirely in B2B. That started in market research and moved on to product management. So I actually went to work for one of my favorite clients, who is Shure, the microphone manufacturer.
Oh,
But I worked on the digital signal processors and then moved on to high-speed document scanners, and then started my marketing consulting agency in 2007. So a real fun year to start a business, the beginning of the Great
yeah,
Recession.
right.
And so really our mission is to help primarily established businesses achieve double-digit growth, that's fueled by their marketing.
Mhm.
And that's really achieved by focusing on strategy. How do we translate sales and marketing goals into marketing deliverables? And then how do we execute on those with content and digital marketing? And so that's where our focus is.
It's awesome. So what was the motivation though? Like what was the reason why? I mean, you have these 12 years, this extensive experience, right? That, you with different in product management and distribution channel strategy. I mean, what kind of motivated you to transition from these corporate roles to, establishing your own B2B marketing consulting agency?
Well, I'd always wanted to start a marketing company, even in college, where there were did some initial marketing work, just more promotional marketing, but that's joined an organization called Pi Sigma Epsilon, which is a marketing organization. So that's really what got me interested in marketing, because I went to school to become an accountant, only to
Oh,
discover that I loathe accounting once I started taking accounting courses. I think it was cost accounting that really broke me. So I found this marketing organization. I thought, wouldn't it be, fantastic to start a business? But I didn't know the first thing about doing something like that. So after I graduated, started working in market research and then product management. And then, necessity being the mother of invention, I got laid off from a job at Bell and Howell, where it was high-speed document scanners was the sexy, products we were working on there. So I needed something else to do. And, I let it be known that I was looking for something. And this was LinkedIn was just getting started back then. So put it out there. And a guy I used to work with at Shure said, "Hey, I need some help." And so I was looking for a job, but I had a little bit of severance pay to work with. So I thought, maybe make a little money while I'm looking for a job and getting some severance. So I'm okay for a couple of months, but then not. And then in working with him, I really liked it. I really liked being out of the corporate environment. He is a small business in the pro audio world, doing custom designs, and he'd come out with his own product. He needs somebody to really help, market and sell his product. So I really like doing that. And I thought, if I could get another client, he was paying me about half of what I was making, with a corporate job.
yeah.
But if I could find another one, I could replace my salary and, get it going and, start that business that I thought about so long ago, but never knew how to get it started. With some encouragement from my wife, business coach, who I still work with 18 years later, and married 20 years later, then you have turned into we're a team of 9 people now,
Wow.
and, you know, doing some fun things.
Wow. That's awesome. Innovaxis emphasizes developing holistic marketing strategies to fuel sustainable double-digit growth for B2B companies. And I'm curious, can you talk a little bit more about your process for creating these strategies?
Yeah, it really starts with what are their goals? Do they want to grow double digit or triple digit, or we've worked with work uniform providers that wanted to grow 5% and not anymore because the
Yeah.
investment that it took to even afford that 5% because they buy all the uniforms and lease them out over time. So we translate those goals into marketing deliverables. Okay, so if it's super competitive market, you want to grow 20%, it might take a lot to do that. So
Mm.
then we look at, well, what is your ideal target markets and what's your differentiation? Some companies really struggle with that. So we typically start out with the brand storytelling process, which is really a deep dive into their business to really understand who they serve, what problems they solve for them, how they solve those problems. And that's where product, services, features, benefits come in. If
Mhm.
you lead with product, services, features, benefits, you lose people who aren't able to connect the dots on their own to
Mm.
how does this solve my problems? What is this going to do for me? You might say it's the best. You might say you're industry leading, but why? And what does that mean for me? So that's really essential in today's marketing messaging. So then we go through that process with our clients to really understand their business because one of the biggest problems that companies have with marketing agencies is that the marketing agency doesn't really understand the world of their served markets and their needs and what the company needs, to reach into those markets and to grow and often very competitive, market spaces.
Yeah. And that's a big thing, I think, especially B2B marketing, using industry specific terms when you're talking like in a sales conversation with a potential client or something and showing them that you understand their world. It
Yeah.
goes so far in telling, like, hey, we've been here before and we can help you. And it's one of those things where I feel like if you don't, or if you even mess up a word or you don't use it right, it immediately turns clients like that off. And so I love your point about really making sure that you understand their world.
Well, it's essential to understand what they need, what their problems are, and how they speak about that. This is where, we avoid industry lingo and acronyms that, serve markets don't understand. It's going to be, the message is going to resonate more powerfully when it's really written in their language,
Yeah.
but with the thought leadership of our clients, because our clients need to educate their prospects. Our clients are the experts in what they do, not, their prospects, but it needs to be written in a way that the prospect understands, well, how is this solution going to impact me? Is it the right solution for me? And what can I expect to get out of it? So
Yeah.
yeah, it really all starts in language,
Mhm.
uh, and with the needs of those markets that you can meet with your product services. And then you can start talking about features and benefits and start comparing with alternatives and so forth.
Yeah. So you enjoy working with clients who offer tremendous value to their markets. They aim for aggressive growth and they maintain an open-minded approach. How do these client attributes enhance the effectiveness of your guys' marketing strategies?
Well, it really starts with an open mind. If you want to grow and you're not, you need to do something different.
Right.
And so, it takes an open mind to really be able to explore new things and take risks.
Mhm.
So I think that's really critical. And then, yeah, the golden thread that runs through all of our clients is the value add. They really need to articulate that value in the
Mhm.
language of their prospects so the prospects understand it. And then
Mhm.
the prospect can say, well, is this right for me or not?
Mhm.
Because we all know that everything we do is not for everyone.
Right.
It's for certain people when it's all about fit. But you need to articulate your value so that prospects can understand, is there a fit now or maybe in the future? And so our clients need help articulating that value because sometimes, especially when you look at blue ocean strategy, that there's often value in what you provide you may not fully understand. So it's really important to talk with prospects and customers to understand where they see value in you, as well as just things in general and what their needs are, and then to orient yourself to that. And if they value things that you don't provide, it's probably not, a good target
Right.
market for you.
So, one quick look at your website, and you guys work with a lot of different industries in the B2B space, but is there a specific like, small business, mid-size, enterprise? Like, is there a specific level that you find yourself you work best with?
I think there's a couple of sweet spots which are really kind of the same. It's either the, let's say, 5 to $100 million company, sometimes less, that's really growth oriented and investment minded, and sometimes larger, but they've got a part of the organization we work with. So we've worked with billion-dollar companies, but we worked with a smaller part, not at that big corporate level. We're
Right.
probably too small for that. But for their divisions, we could be a perfect fit because we're larger than most marketing departments
Mhm.
of, even, some decent sized middle-sized companies.
Right.
So and then I like to think about it as old school and new school. So old school, we love working with, I've got a manufacturing background, so we love working with manufacturing, their distributors, their resellers and VARs, construction, to help modernize their marketing so that it can become a competitive advantage. Adding e-commerce when that's a fit, even for services. Then new school is more the software vendors, their technology integrators, the even professional services are often, more forward-thinking, more digitally savvy, but they might suffer from random acts of marketing. They've tried lots of different things, but they're not gaining traction. I talked to one that said we're literally throwing bleep against the wall, it seems, and we're not getting anywhere. So they need strategy and then they need help with execution. So we like to work with both. And I know some tell you, no, you've got to pick a niche and just, penetrate that niche and just be focused there. But if your value translates to multiple markets, why limit yourself in that way? So different philosophy perhaps than some other agency owners might have, but we have strong depth in each one of those markets. Now we don't serve everybody. There are
Mhm.
some, the ones listed on our site, the ones I mentioned are natural fits. There are others that are less of a fit because they need things that we don't provide as much. And
Right.
there's nothing wrong with that, so we don't serve the entire world of B2B, a good swath of it, but the value does tend to translate, even though an excavator has got, it seems radically different from a custom software
Right.
developer, but actually there's the crux of what they need is the same. It's just executed differently.
Right. Wow, good point. I like that. And you mentioned something a little earlier that I wanted to touch on. As a blue ocean strategy practitioner, you advocate for creating uncontested market space. So how do you integrate this methodology with SEO practices to help clients stand out in saturated markets? And what kind of common misconceptions do you address about SEO with your clients?
Well, with Blue Ocean Strategy, when we think about inbound marketing and people actively searching for the solutions you provide, well, SEO helps you pull them in. So that's demand capture. So you need content is central to that, optimized for search, supplemented with content syndication, Google Ads. So you're pulling in as many of those people as possible. But of course, that's the first battle. Second is your messaging. Your brand storytelling has got to resonate. We talked about that before. So that you pull them in, resonate. That's where lead generation and e-commerce sales comes from.
Hmm.
But there's always more people not searching for what you do at any given time than are. We
Yeah.
all know email marketing and other outbound efforts is an uphill battle. It's
Hmm.
important, if you have powerful messaging, you're very targeted, it can work,
Right.
especially if you don't give up on it. You have different types of touch points, et cetera. But then you often find yourself in the red ocean of competition where it's a heavily saturated market, and so where is there less competition where they going to appreciate the value that you offer. So the one of the most important aspects of blue ocean, especially to start with, are where are there adjacent markets, adjacent meaning they're different from your serve market in some significant way, but they value what you do in a very similar way as the people you serve today. So that's why it's really important to understand your value and where you are enhancing value over strategic alternatives and where you're offering value no one else can touch, and then knowing where people value that, which markets value that, then going after them. And sometimes also it's finding new revenue streams with target markets you're serving today. You know, we've got a company that they design the pallet displays for everything sold on the floor at Costco
Mm,
and the other warehouse clubs. And so, but oftentimes large companies need what they do, but the large company can only work with the designated vendors.
right.
And and so they get to a point where their designated vendors are underserving them. Our client is a perfect fit, but they don't have designated vendor status. So we identified, well, if that company can, maybe the order goes through the designated vendor, but they can do the project or the program management, because those vendors aren't going to be proactive. They don't know what the retailers need, but our client does. So then they could shepherd these projects through so they could be successful. Maybe they don't get the order, which they'd really like to have, but they get the consulting, and then maybe they can become a designated vendor in time. So that's
Right.
a way where it's not all or nothing to work with these prospects, and it gives them a roadmap to then becoming designated vendors for these larger companies that they really want to work with. So that's just a brief example, though. There may
Yeah.
be untapped revenue streams where your existing markets that you serve see so much value they're willing to pay for it. But if you're willing to work in a different way than what you do for manufacturers, sometimes that's providing services, that go along with their products, and or monetizing the discovery process. For professional services, there might be a whole bunch of service areas that you could develop that you haven't thought of because you don't see how your markets value what you do in their eyes.
Yeah. And that's the value of hiring an outside agency like yours, because you guys bring that perspective. Sometimes, as a company, you get tunnel vision a little bit, and so I look there's where the value comes from.
And we're a big fan of repeatable processes. So the
Yeah.
brand story process, the blue ocean
Right.
strategy process, these are, established, and we evolve them over time because things change and they can't remain stagnant. We're big fans of, more of an agile marketing approach. But it's important to have, a well-honed process like that versus it just being a purely creative endeavor. Obviously, people need creativity, in what they do, but they need,
But
a process to really surface the most important elements of what they do so that then, new marketing opportunities can be capitalized on.
yeah. Well, this has been so great, Sean. Where can people learn more about you, and where can people learn more about your agency?
Well, just Google B2B marketing agency and you'll find us on the first page.
Wow.
Might be below the paid search results, or you could go to innovaxisinc.com. That's INNOVAXISINC.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being on. This is very great, very informative.
Thank you, Shiv. It's my pleasure.